As producers, we're always trying to get the most out of our time in the studio, and rightfully so. Whether you only have a few minutes to spare for music each day, or if you do this full time, we're all trying to be as effective and efficient as possible. So then today I want to share with you 3 easy and powerful hacks that have helped me make beats faster and get more done in the studio. Hey there, I'm Ivan Calderon and welcome back to another video. So first things first, I want to wish every single one of you a happy new year. I know 2020 was definitely one for the books and maybe not in the best way, but nonetheless, I am really excited for 2021 and specifically what it could bring for this channel. Also, real quick, I just launched my brand new website. Now, this is kind of like a central hub for everything that I do. So that includes my production portfolio, services that I offer, and I just included one-on-one private classes. A lot of people have been requesting that. So that's also a thing you can book through my website, products that I sell, and of course, these videos. So go ahead and check it out. It's the same domain, ivancalderon.com, just a new restructured website. But okay, today we're talking about how to get more done in the studio. Now, this for me is kind of a never-ending topic because I'm always looking for new ways to be more productive, more efficient, and just in general work with more intent. Now, over the past couple months, I've been using 3 really easy but effective hacks that have helped me get more done, and today I want to share them with you. Before we get started, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button and drop a comment down below as it helps with the YouTube algorithm and allows us to grow. And finally, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you get notified of every time that I upload. Thank you so much for your support. But okay, without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, so tip number 1 is to create a template. I've done a full breakdown video of my current production template, so I'll make sure to link that up top here for you in case you missed it. And I'll probably do an updated one in the next coming weeks simply because I've changed a few things. But in general, a template for me is simply just a guide that gives me direction and allows me to focus. You can make your template be whatever you want it to be, but a good one, in my opinion, is one that removes obstacles, reduces redundant tasks, and allows you to get to work quicker. The way that I do this with my template is that I include a bunch of VSTs, effect plugins, and just anything else in general that I frequently use. That way, the next time that I open up my DAW to create, they're readily available. The idea here is that you're cutting down on these repetitious tasks that would add up over time, and instead refocus all of that time to get straight to work. Now, with VSTs and plugins, the job is simple. Just add them to your session, save as a template, and you're ready to go. But what about drums? Now, my pro tip here is to create a folder or banks with your favorite go-to sounds, and maybe even divide them up into genres. If you have certain sounds that you tend to use a lot, then put them in a folder, categorize them so that way you can access them quicker. As mentioned before, you could even do this with genres. So if you make a lot of trap and R&B, for example, make different folders, one for R&B drum sounds, one for trap drum sounds, and that way the next time you sit down to make these 2 genres or whatever, you have sounds that you know will work. If you use Studio One like me, an alternative would be to use Impact XT, which is Studio One's native drum sequencer. Impact XT has a bunch of different banks, so you could hypothetically use each bank to house different drum one-shots, and again, even based on genre. If you have my Beatmaker's toolbar, then you could even combine that with this method to create drums even quicker. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'll make sure to link that toolbar video up above here. The one disclaimer that I will give out here though is that if you do use this method, don't get too fixated on only using those sounds. Your job as a producer is to serve the song or the beat and make it sound as best as you possibly can. So if you start a piece of music and the sounds you've selected really aren't matching up, then go ahead and swap them out. Don't feel like you have to use the sounds you have just because they've been pre-selected. The goal is to be more efficient with your process, yes, but never to sacrifice quality. Moving on, tip number 2 is to limit your options. All right, hear me out. I know there's a bunch of different options out there for music production tools, from EQs to compressors to reverbs and everything else in between. What makes this worse, and I'm super guilty of this myself, is that oftentimes whenever we feel stuck or uninspired, we tend to take the easy route, which is to buy more sounds and more software. That, or if you already have a ton of different tools, then you end up spending way more time deciding what to use than actually making music. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know that I love to read. And a few months back, I was reading a book called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. And the entire premise of this book is that oftentimes having too many options can actually hinder productivity because it puts you in what he calls analysis paralysis. The basic idea is that the more options you have, the more time you'll spend picking the right one without actually doing the task you set out to do. This can literally be applied to every aspect of life, and music production is no exception. As mentioned before, there is an endless supply of EQs, reverbs, drum one-shots, and everything else, so as a producer, it can get really easy to get lost in choices. Now, over the past few months, I've had to really sit down and think about what I use to create music, so as a result, I've picked some of my favorite tools and got rid of the rest. This is also true for drum one-shots, which is why I think having go-to folders is super important. Reducing my options has allowed me to create this sort of like artificial restriction, which helps me to tunnel in and focus on what really matters, which is creating music. Now, if you come across a specific problem that requires a specific tool, then by all means use it, but the point of this is that by reducing your options, you're freeing up headspace, which allows you to get more meaningful work done. Okay, last but not least, tip number 3 is to use a timer when making beats, and I know this sounds really silly, but hear me out. In the productivity circles, there's this thing called Parkinson's Law, which basically states how your work will expand to the amount of time that you give it. Basically put, if you have a lot of time to complete a task, then more often than not, that task will take up all of that time. When I was in school, the most common scenario of this was when I had to write an essay. If my essay was due in 2 weeks, then more often than not, it would take up those 2 weeks because I had plenty of time. As opposed to if the essay was due the next day, you better believe that I made the strongest batch of coffee and I got it done. I found that it works the exact same way with music. If you have no deadline, then you have no pressure to get it done, so you'll often take as much time as you want. Sometimes that time is necessary, but more often than not, we're just perfectionists trying to tweak little things that already sound good. So then the way that I fix this when making beats or just creating music in general is by using something called the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method basically consists of you setting a timer for 25 minutes and then working for the duration of that time. No distractions, no excuses. After the 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break and you do this in cycles. After the 4th cycle, you take a longer 15-minute break and you do this over and over until you get your task done. Now, I've had to modify this a little bit when working with music, so basically what I do is that whenever I sit down to make a beat, I set my timer for 25 minutes and I get to work. If by the time the timer runs out, I don't have a solid idea, and I don't mean a finished beat, I just mean something that feels good to me, then I move on to the next idea. I don't dwell on it. If on the other hand, I have something that I feel pretty decent about, then I give myself another hour to finish it and then keep going that way. I do an hour, you can do whatever you want, but the whole point is to set an artificial restriction, an artificial deadline, so you're not working on this beat forever. Now, this method has worked for me because usually the times that I tend to get stuck are when I start to overthink, which usually happens in the beginning, so that's why setting that initial 25-minute timer is so important for me. There's a free tool that I use for this called BeFocus, which is basically a utility that you download to your computer, and it keeps track of your timers and cycles, so I'll make sure to link that down below if you want to check it out. Only caveat is that I think it only works with Mac, but I'm sure there's plenty of good ones out there for Windows, and worst case scenario, you could always just use your phone to keep track of your timers. But that's it. Those are the 3 hacks that I've been using over the past couple months to get more done and be more efficient in the studio. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, like this video if you like to subscribe if you're not already, but I will see you on the next one.